the Growing for Market podcast.
The climate here is super interesting. It's very dry. One really interesting example is everybody thinks that because we're southern Oregon, and everybody says, oh, well, you're that much closer to California. Obviously, you're going to get tomatoes and stuff quicker than the Willamette region up north of Oregon. And that's not the case because we are so dry. The nighttime temps drop off considerably. So we don't have the same degree days that the Willamette does. So like Willamette Valley, just 2.5 hours north of us, we'll get tomatoes 2 to 4 weeks earlier than we will because the nighttime temps stay higher. So you have those degree days that accumulate. And so that's something that's always really interesting. But like I said, I would take the dry weather over that wet, humid weather because the disease pressure is so much less down here too.
Hello and welcome to the Growing for Market podcast, where we talk about growing, marketing, and the business of growing vegetables and flowers for local markets like farmers markets, CSAs, farm stands, and local wholesaling. I'm Katie Kulla, your host and a writer for Growing for Market magazine. For 33 years, the magazine for flower and vegetable market farmers. If you're enjoying the podcast, just wait till you see the magazine. Go to growingformarket.com for more. Also, if you could give us a follow and a rating, it really helps other like-minded people find the podcast. And now let's take a minute to hear from our sponsors. It's with their generous support that we can bring you the podcast for free.
Looking for innovative packaging solutions to take your business to the next level? Look no further than Aru Company, your one-stop shop for all your packaging needs. Aru offers sustainable and comprehensive packaging solutions for the floral, produce, and specialty packaging industries, ensuring you receive high-quality products customized to your needs. Our resealable closed bottom sleeves are the perfect solution for packaging fresh cut herbs and microgreens. With a crystal clear anti-fog design, they enhance retail appeal, save shelf space, and are easy to fill. Available in 2 recyclable polypropylene sizes, these lightweight sleeves feature resealable adhesive tops and sealed bottoms for convenience. Perfect for fresh, dried, or preserved herbs. Contact us to learn more or ask about custom printing. And for our Growing for Market listeners, we've got a special offer just for you. Use the code GFM15 during checkout to enjoy an exclusive 15% discount on our web shop. For more options, be sure to visit Aru Company at aru.com and discover the complete range of our product offerings. Because when it comes to quality and innovation, Aru Company is the name you can trust. A well-built high tunnel is one of the smartest investments a small farm can make. It protects your crops, extends your season, and keeps income rolling in even through winter. Nifty Hoops builds complete Gothic high tunnels that are easy to install and built to last. Their easy, bolt-together construction makes setup straightforward and efficient, whether it's a small backyard hoop house or a dozen large production-scale high tunnels. Especially through their community build option, where professional builders work alongside your crew, family, or neighbors to build each structure, usually in a single day. Most growers go with Nifty's full setup: steel-framed end walls, roll-up sides, baseboards, double plastic with inflation, automated vents, and real doors, all priced to make the best choice the easy one. Nifty is a small crew out of Michigan using U.S. steel and working hands-on with growers across the country. They'll help evaluate your site, handle NRCS paperwork, and if they're building with you, they'll even float your cost share until after the build. Visit niftyhoops.com to learn more. Farm more seasons. Grow more food. Nifty Hoops.
Hello, everyone. Today I am talking with Chris Jagger, co-owner of Blue Fox Farm in the Applegate Valley of Southern Oregon. Chris has been farming organic vegetables since 1997. He started Blue Fox with his wife and family in 2003. Since then, Blue Fox has seen many manifestations, from more complicated multi-outlet marketing to streamlined wholesale. Chris has also focused on working on improving the local and regional food systems in his area and supporting young and beginning farmers as much as possible through sharing info on Instagram, through classes, at conferences, and also through one-on-one help. Welcome, Chris. I'm so glad to have you here today.
Thanks for having me.
Okay, as always, let's start at the beginning. Our audience loves to hear people's farming stories. Chris, you've been farming for over 2 decades now. Share with us, please, how you first got involved in farming and how you got to where you are today.
Yep. Yeah, it's kind of been a journey. Let's see, mid 90s, I was going to college in the Midwest at Iowa State University. And for some reason, I still don't know why, but I got interested in trying to figure out where my food was coming from. I think maybe I was tired of eating at Taco Bell at that point in time or something. I don't know. And so I kind of started investigating where my food was coming from. And I ended up working at a natural food store, like a co-op in Ames, and kind of just started going from there. And then eventually, once I finished college, moved to the West Coast and kind of started exploring out there. And then my wife and I actually ended up meeting in Santa Cruz in 97. And she was studying agroecology at UC Santa Cruz. And I was just, a traveling vagabond of sorts at that time, and but still kind of hunting and searching for what it was that I wanted to do in the world of food. And I had done work with Food Not Bombs, which was a big thing at that time, and a lot of dumpster diving for food, and kind of like, hey, maybe we could have fresh produce too. And so started working on just farms around the Santa Cruz area, which Santa Cruz is kind of like, it's always been a hotbed for organics. And then she and I both interned on farms. And at that time, everybody found internships through the ATRA site. And that was back in the day where you would actually send a paper application out and then wait 8 to 12 weeks to hear back from the farm, hopefully.
Yes.
Yeah. And so we both got internships on farms in Colorado, separate farms actually, which was a really good thing for us to do, is to see if we both individually liked farming ourselves. And then after that season, we ended up managing the farm that she had interned on one of the previous seasons, and managed their garden at this. It was like a full diet CSA, which was the full diet CSA thing wasn't really a thing at that time, but they kind of were doing the raw milk dairy and like the whole spectrum of food. And so we were managing the garden at that location, like 5 acres, and did that for 2 seasons, got married there, and then ended up out in Oregon and started looking for land out in Oregon, and found our place that we went in on with our family, our extended family, Melanie's parents, and then Melanie's sister and her husband at the time, and started at 0 acres and very little money, and started just hustling and making it work.
Yeah, so that's Blue Fox Farm.
Mm-hmm.
Share about how it's evolved over the years, because I know it's been a lot of different things in the time that you've been operating it.
Yeah, so started at basically 1 acre small market garden, and each year we kind of started scaling up just to be able to make ends meet, because we were just had to figure out how to pay for everything. So it was like 1 acre, 3 acres, leased some ground, 7 acres, 10 acres, 12 acres, bought another property that the whole family went in on as well, which that's something that I think everybody always wonders, is like, how do farmers do it? And we were lucky enough to have family that put the down payment on both properties, and we just paid the mortgage. We wouldn't have been able to do it without doing that. So bought another property that became our production ground, still doing CSA markets. And then we moved into wholesale, and we ran wholesale and focused on markets, restaurant sales, local sales, and got up to about 45 acres in production. And then we had a moment where there was a hiccup in the wholesale world, where one of the large grocery chains that our wholesaler was selling to shifted their buying policy. And so we went from selling as much produce as we could to them to 0 in like 1 day. So that was a real wake up call for us.
Wow.
And that kind of made us kind of look at kind of what we were doing. And, we basically had to scale back because you had a lot of produce, and we're kind of in a remote valley.
Yeah, I feel like we should talk about this. It's not like you're right outside the Seattle or Portland area.
Yeah. So Southern Oregon, where we are in the Applegate Valley, it's pretty remote. And the largest city, I would call it more of a town, is Medford, which is about 80,000 people. The whole Southern Oregon region is maybe 250,000 people, but it's very fragmented and dominated by big box stores and chains and stuff. And so we do have some really strong co-ops down here, but there's only so much produce that you can push through those venues. So at that time, we were really dependent on sending our produce to a distributor to get spread throughout the upper Northwest. And so that was a real wake up call for us. But luckily, we had never been super leveraged as far as taking lots of loans out. We always did a kind of pay as you go kind of thing. It's like we kind of operated within our means, for better, for worse. Sometimes I'm like, maybe if I was to do it all again, I might have taken some loans out to get equipment earlier. But other than that, I was really glad in that case that we weren't super leveraged, that basically we could just till a bunch of ground in and scale back and finish out that season. And then after that season of kind of the shift from wholesale, we kind of really started fine tuning what our sales were, our crop list, all of that, and started scaling back. And then we scaled back to probably about 12 acres. And at that time, we still had a lot of expenses of a large operation. So that's kind of around the time that I also started doing consulting and then doing an ag supply business. And so I had a good team working with me, and I had some field managers that were working with me that were really good. And I was able to balance running the vegetable farm along with the consulting and the supply business to kind of keep the cash flow going to pay for the whole operation.
So at that point, the farm itself was, it sounds like, maybe marginally working to meet its own financial needs?
No.
Or is that because of your family and just your own personal income needs?
Yeah. So
Okay.
exactly. So the farm has always been in the black. It's always operated in the black, which is good. It's something we've always strived towards. But I just knew raising a family was going to be really expensive. So just having the ability to have a little bit more money to put into retirement accounts, IRAs and Roth IRAs, and looking at education funds for our kids, because we knew that, that would come quick, which now we're there. We're real close to our first child going into college in another year. So, we kind of saw that coming. And then the other thing about having the other income stream was we were then never forced to go into that world of taking loans out. We were able to set more money back each season to then pay for the farm the following spring. So it was more of like a cash flow source for the whole operation. And I mean, when you're doing consulting and supplies and then the farm, they all kind of merge together really well. So it was a really easy flow to do. And I'm glad I did it. So.
And did you run them under the same umbrella business, or?
No. So Blue Fox Farm was one entity as an LLC, and then Blue Fox Ag Services was another entity as an LLC. Honestly, that was just to keep everything clear for my certifiers, being certified organic.
Mm-hmm.
And also, it was just easier to, when you're in that world of supply chain, the supply chain world, I was always worried that something was going to go south, possibly. And I just wanted to have the separation of liability between the two businesses, which nothing ever happened, but it just felt like a good safety net,
Yes, understandable. I want to give us a little more context too. We mentioned that this region you live in is overall like not a huge population base, but also for people who aren't familiar with Oregon, not only is it, you said 250,000 people kind of in the region, but they're really spread out.
Yeah.
I mean, I have friends who live down there who drive like an hour to the closest town, and that's normal in the area. There's just people kind of all over, but really dispersed. I would like to talk a little bit more about the Applegate Valley and the growing conditions that shape your farming experience, because it's also a unique region in that way. It's not really like the rest of Oregon. In some ways, it feels a little more like California. Can you tell a little bit about the climate and the soil and what you deal with down there?
Yeah, it is a real anomaly compared to the rest of Oregon. So it's very similar to when we were farming in Colorado. So it's kind of a semi-arid desert, but semi-arid mountainous region. We have tons of microclimates here. No rain in the summertime. So our irrigation is completely dependent on irrigation canals and irrigation systems. Water rights are crucial here. And that is really like, some people will be like, oh, how do you do it? Well, in some ways it's amazing because you have full control over your water. So it lets you steer your crops how you want them to go. So another feature of this area is that it's a big seed growing region because we have such dry summers and long summers. So you can cut water off whenever you need to if you're doing seed production. And so the climate here is super interesting. It's very dry. One really interesting example is, everybody thinks that because we're southern Oregon, and everybody says, oh, well, you're that much closer to California. Obviously, you're going to get tomatoes and stuff quicker than the Willamette region up north of Oregon. And that's not the case because we are so dry. The nighttime temps drop off considerably. So we don't have the same degree days that the Willamette does. So like Willamette Valley, just 2.5 hours north of us, we'll get tomatoes 2 to 4 weeks earlier than we will because the nighttime temps stay higher. So you have those degree days that accumulate. And so that's something that's always really interesting. But like I said, I would take the dry weather over that wet, humid weather because the disease pressure is so much less down here too. So we can get really creative with what we can grow here. And then the soil type here, I mean, really the soils are what drew me to this area. They're endless, bottomless soils in certain areas, not everywhere. It's not big, wide, expansive valleys like the Willamette. It's very narrow valleys, but the soil is where it's good. It's very amazing, silty and sandy loams. And with the irrigation, you can, like I said, you can really steer crops to do amazing things. You can grow anything here, honestly.
Mm-hmm. Another feature of the landscape is wildfire, right? This is a pretty common element of summers in Southern Oregon. Does that have any effect on your experience farming there in terms of smoke or other factors I'm not thinking of?
We went through a period of time where it was definitely more intense than it has been in the last, 3 to 5 years. I think some of it is that the crews have really started prioritizing it more. I mean, that's like a whole other podcast right there.
Yeah. That'll be part 2. Wildfires for Chris.
Yeah. So we had a period of time where there were some massive fires here, 200,000 acre fires, and we were completely socked in for a month, where it was like harvesting in respirators and all of that. And we thankfully haven't had that scale of fires in several years. So it's been more small fires with smoke moving into the area. You just kind of change and adapt, and if the air quality index gets above a certain point, you kind of either harvest and work in respirators, or you just, and you always give staff the option of like, you can work in respirators if you feel comfortable about that, or you can just go home and stay inside, and that sucks for the world of farming because, you kind of have to do the farming regardless. But we've just learned to adapt to it. I'm trying to think. It hasn't really affected anything directly in the last several years.
Okay.
But it's something that is always in the back of our head. And honestly, probably one of the biggest things is just wondering when your electricity is going to go off, because they put a lot tighter restrictions on when they cut power just for safety now. And so we lose power a lot more. And that's one of the things that I know a lot of farms are looking into, resiliency efforts, looking into full farm generator backup and that kind of stuff. But that's really expensive.
Right, because what if you just transplanted and you need to irrigate,
Yep.
all your fall brassicas and then suddenly you have no water? That would be rough. And for those of you who aren't on the West Coast and don't understand what Chris just said, now in many regions here, when we have what we call red flag events, where there's wind and high heats, often they will turn off the electric grid because downed power lines are one of the major sources of ignition for wildfires at this point. And so, especially in rural areas, the power lines that travel distances in forested areas can be really dangerous. So yeah, people like Chris, it doesn't happen as often where I am in the Willamette Valley, but I know up and down the West Coast now, it's becoming a more standard feature of life that, like Chris is saying, in the summer, just getting a notice that your power is going to be off for the next 12 to sometimes even up to 48 hours, depending on some of these breezes we get through here. It's kind of wild. And now let's take a minute to hear from our sponsors. It's with their generous support that we can bring you the podcast for free.
Renewal season is here, and the work you put in now is what brings members back next year. Melanie from Shake Fork Community Farm, who you may remember as a guest on this podcast, brought in $40,000 in renewals in just 2 weeks. Now she's sharing her exact strategy in a free live workshop and downloadable playbook from Farmhand. Get the playbook and watch on demand at farmhand.partners/GFM. That's farmhand.partners/GFM. The Vermont Compost Pre-Buy Sale is back with 20% off orders placed, paid for, and shipped by October 31st. Since 1993, Vermont Compost Company has grown from a small, local operation to a company supplying premium soils to thousands of successful growers all over the country. Vermont Compost Company carefully sources the highest quality materials and amendments to create manure compost and manure compost-based living soils that are approved for organic growing. In addition to product consistency, growers can depend on Vermont Compost Company as an invaluable resource for a breadth of soil and plant knowledge and the technical expertise it takes to grow organically in an ever-changing environment. Each fall, Vermont Compost Company offers a pre-buy sale to incentivize ordering your spring soil before winter settles in. Early bird customers save 20% on orders placed, paid for, and shipped by October 31st. For more information, visit vermontcompost.com/prebuy or call 802-223-6049. Vermont Compost Company, living soils for organic growing since 1993.
And now, back to the show. So tell me more about your farming work today, because we've talked a little bit about the big evolutions, and you've had another one recently, I think.
Yep. So I had 2 years away from the farm doing a consulting gig with a cannabis farm. And that was honestly a good sabbatical from the farm. I was definitely burned out, especially after COVID happened and we were doing door-to-door sales as far as deliveries and stuff. And that was wild. And I had just been in it for 20 years at that point, close to at least. And then I had this opportunity to go help these folks out for a couple seasons. And that was great to implement my vegetable growing practices in a cannabis situation and really look at the inputs that were going in and cutting costs and helping them out. And then after that, I came back to the farm and kind of like regrouped. And I had this opportunity to grow for our food bank in the area, which was kind of a dream, coming from the world of Food Not Bombs. It was kind of a full circle moment where there was this grant money available, basically where they said, pick X amount of crops. So I had like 5 or 6 crops that I picked and grow those on volume. And we'll give you a budget of X amount of dollars and you harvest those crops throughout the season and bring them to us. And then we're going to distribute those crops out to people in need. It's a dream. It was amazing.
Yeah, that does sound amazing. Yeah.
And I definitely was pinching myself the whole season being like, how can this be? Because it was incredible. And I basically did that season. I had some friends help out here and there on some big transplants. My kids came out a couple times to help, but more than anything, it was just me doing most of the work. And the crops that I picked were really easy crops: carrots, cucumbers, potatoes, bell peppers, tomatoes. Oh, and then winter squash. So those were all things that I could do on scale, only have one big planting of most, or bigger successions. I wasn't planting every week. And that worked really good. And we thought that was going to continue, but then there was fundings got cut. It seems like there's been a lot of that.
Yes. I was going to ask. Yeah.
Yeah.
Those kind of grants are disappearing.
They are. And it was one of those things that often I do see a lot of waste that can happen in the world of federal subsidies or federal grants or whatever. But this is one of those cases where I was just like, this is pretty cut and dry. It's like grow food for people in need and feed them like fresh produce instead of just getting crappy, rotting in a box produce. Like, brilliant. So did that for the full season. Funding got cut. And then it was like, regroup. What are we going to do then? And so this year, I'm still growing for one food advocacy organization that's a nonprofit, and that's been really cool. And then I jumped back into the world of wholesale directly to area co-ops. I've had a long-standing relation with two of our area food co-ops, and so I've gone back into doing that. And honestly, I've learned a ton this year and did as much as I can with a very minimal crew. It was just me and two employees. And I've learned a lot this year. I've learned that there is a dead zone. Let me side shoot here for a second. So there's a dead zone of economics in especially, well, in all of agriculture, but especially in small scale organic ag. And that dead zone of economic viability, when I first started, I think that dead zone was usually somewhere between 7 and 10 acres, where you kind of didn't have, and if you're trying to operate in that realm, you kind of couldn't really afford enough labor to get all the work done, but you didn't have enough income coming in to like scale up and buy equipment that made it more efficient. And so that dead zone was always an area to kind of avoid. It's like you either stay less than 7 acres or you go over 10 acres, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And something I've noticed now, and this is not across the board, this is just for me personally with my farm system and where I am geographically and demographically and all that. For whatever reason, I think that that dead zone has grown now, has widened. And so this year I was operating in that like 10 to 12 acre range, and it's really a challenge. And the economics are not there like they were at one point, because I think the cost of employees has gone up, the cost of doing production as far as your infrastructure costs and all that has gone up so much. And so it's been a real eye opener for me this year as far as that goes. And the other side of that is that there's so many more places now that you can get organic produce. It's really spread out customer or like shoppers' ability to get organic produce in our area, so they don't depend on the co-ops directly as much as they used to. We have so many more opportunities. So unless I wanted to go ahead and start spreading myself out even thinner and going to all these other outlets, which I don't even know if I could get into, I've just had to really tighten up ship and really focus on what I'm sending to the co-ops. So a lot of lessons learned this year. It's been a good learning curve this year.
So do you foresee yourself trying to get out of that dead zone by going up or down for next year? What are your thoughts?
Probably. So I'm really looking towards deciding if I really want to keep going with what I'm doing. So I have another side thing that I've been doing is I lease out part of my land to one of the folks that has worked with me in the past. And I've done that over the last 7 or 8 years now. I've always leased out part of the land to beginning farmers, people trying to get their start. And so I'm kind of debating whether at this point in my career, if it makes more sense to go ahead and find somebody else as well as my current friend that's farming here and kind of move into some other opportunities in the consulting world, or kind of looking at what I can do here in the Pacific Northwest to help grow kind of the regional food system. There's a lot of things I'm thinking about right now, but I'm leaning more towards that just because I think the answer to your question would be to scale up again. And I don't think that it's viable to scale up at this point because labor availability has dwindled so much. There's just no labor, especially here in Southern Oregon. The labor availability is pretty much gone. So it would kind of be not that I couldn't pull it off, but man, it would be jumping back into this scale that I just don't, I think it would be hard to pull off here where I'm at specifically.
Yeah, we've already talked a couple times about how it's not a super populous region, but you feel like that's been a shift. What's the demographic shift there in terms of
multiple
who used to work and who is not there now, who's not interested? What's going on there that from your perspective? Obviously this is,
yeah,
with some of this we're, it's our personal experience, is not necessarily a treatise on the Southern Oregon labor economy, but what have you seen and experienced?
Yeah, so there's two things. One is the cannabis industry was huge here for a long time. And then as that marketplace bottomed out and kind of saw the rise and fall. It was just like the gold rush days. We saw the rise and the fall of that entire industry.
The green rush, we call it sometimes.
Yeah, exactly. We saw that kind of rise and fall. And because of that, now there's still farms around the area that have been here for a long time, but the population base that used to be here is just not here anymore. So it used to be we could get kids that would come and work with us for most of the season. And then the idea is they would jump into a trim scene or something like that at the end of the growing season and work for a cannabis farm right as our season was winding up. Then they could jump into that. And that worked really good because we would be able to have folks that would be with us for most of the season. And there was just more people around to pick from too, as to see who was available. So that's one factor that shifted. The other factor that's shifted is that the grape world has seen a glut in the last several years. So a lot of acres of grapes are getting taken out of production, as well as the orchards that used to be here. Most of them are gone now. And with those, there used to be a lot more, I guess, immigrant labor that would kind of drive that. And we're in an interesting time with ICE and immigrants and the wild times that we're having with all of that. And so a lot of folks have just left the area because of that as well, being uncertain as to what's going to happen there. And I completely understand. And so those two communities are just not in force like they used to be here. And so it's gotten really challenging, and my premise is that for better or for worse, I mean, everybody has their own opinion, but at some point we're going to have to rely on more autonomous equipment, and that's getting developed right now, but it's not at that stage that I can just go out and buy some autonomous tractors to affordably to just throw on the farm and have them take care of the field work. I think in 5 to 10 years, we'll start seeing more of that become available for a small to medium sized farm. And that would be the eventual idea of how a small farm could work in the future, but we're not there yet either. So that's kind of why it's drawn me to think and premise like, how can I plug in and keep helping the agricultural community of the Pacific Northwest keep strong and resilient. So that's kind of where I'm at right now.
Yeah, I hear you on all that. It does seem like there was a boom time of young people being interested in this work that's at a low. Things come in waves, so I wouldn't say it's over, but it does seem like compared to when we started our farm in 2006 and we would just get flooding emails of people who wanted to come and work, and we weren't even equipped to employ them full, we didn't have employee housing or anything, and it feels like there's a different vibe. People are interested in different things right now in that demographic. And then, yeah, like you said, with ICE, it's affecting our region too.
Yep.
Yeah, big changes. It would be interesting to see what kind of technology gets developed, because at this point, vegetable growing is still so reliant on human labor. Even when you were doing the food bank, that was still 6 different crops you listed, each of which are completely different than each other in terms of every part of the growing process. And then you get a market farm and they're maybe growing 40 to 50 different crops. Humans can do that. We can just go and pick chard and bundle it and then turn around and dig potatoes without, needing to change our equipment except grabbing a digging fork. So yes, humans are still at the moment very part of this process. And yeah, we'll see.
I've thought about that. And I think that if we were to rely on technology and autonomous tractors or whatever, the parts that could be done by that would be the field prep, the cultivation. That's my dream, is just seeing a robotic tractor going up and down the field with sweeps.
That sounds great. Nobody likes weeding, right?
Well, exactly. And our bed system is set up on a very uniform style system. It's all very modular. And I've thought that that's the kind of stuff that you would hand off to autonomy. And then the artisan side of it, which is the harvest, the picking and selecting, because we're a long ways out from anything being able to do a better job of selecting the proper butter heads out of a succession than humans. So that's the artisan side and if you were able to scale it in such a way that it was, say, the farmer and then a couple really well paid employees that were looking at it from a like artisanal approach, of like a skilled labor artisanal approach.
Right.
I think that sounds really interesting to me, because that's my favorite part of farming still, is the harvesting. I love harvesting.
Me too. It's so satisfying.
Yeah. So I think that there's balance that can be found there. I definitely am never looking for, like, I'm just sitting in the office while the robots are doing everything. That sounds really boring. I want to be interactive out there. I want to be working with the soil. I want to have the bandwidth to like really be investigating what's going on out in the field and observe, and then use the data that comes out of this technology to inform that. That sounds way more interesting to me.
Yeah. I think most people get into farming because they actually like the work. But certainly we like some parts of it more than others.
Yep.
As you've mentioned, you've focused a lot the last few years on farmer education, both through consulting, and you offer a lot of information just for free on your Instagram through videos you make. Why did you make that shift in your work, and what does that look like for you on a given day?
As far as making content for others, you mean?
Yeah. I mean, I guess what inspired that? Yeah. And then what does that mean for your days? Like, how are you spending your days when that's a focus?
So I really like interacting with other farmers. I always have. And I mean, that's how you and I first met years and years ago, was
Yeah.
interacting with other farmers online, and then with our
We
farmer.
were the pioneers of farmer blogs, Chris and I.
Yeah. A long time ago.
Which now it feels like ancient technology.
Yep. So I just like, I mean, the people side of farming is my favorite part, and just sharing how-to info with others has always been something that I've enjoyed. And I just know how much I have pulled my hair out over the years. And then there are elder farmers that, they give you that great input, and your light bulb goes off and you're just like, oh yeah. So just, passing that on was always something that felt right to me. And then when Instagram came out, I was like, oh, this is a really cool platform to be able to share knowledge, because that was kind of like post blog kind of world. And now we've seen Instagram has just turned into a dumpster fire of sorts, but there's still enough people on there that I interact with on a regular basis that I know get value out of it. But as far as what my day looks like whenever I'm making that kind of stuff, my content is not made content. My content is just recorded. That's all it is. And what I mean by that is that I don't do takes. I don't do anything. I just let it rip, and I don't edit anything. I just, like, when I post something to Instagram, that's the one take I did. And I think it's because I spend so much time thinking about the things that are going on out in the field. It's really easy for me then to just like talk into the phone and say, hey, this is what I'm seeing here, and this is what's up. I mean, it's no different than if you were out at my farm and you and I were talking. I just make it very conversational. And I think people value that a lot, because so much of the social world these days is so fabricated and glossy and like perfect and everything. And I think just telling people how it is, there's a real advantage to that, because it doesn't candy coat it for folks. Because like, if people get interested in farming, I want them to understand the reality of it. Sometimes it sucks, and that's okay. So that's kind of what I try to portray when I'm doing that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm. And what does your one-on-one consulting look like? Are you still doing that, or is that kind of on pause this year with more farming?
Honestly, on-site consulting I haven't done for a while, because for me to travel it's really expensive. So there's not a lot of folks that really want to have put that much money into it. But I have a lot of folks that I have ongoing email threads with, just as a guide for them. And I don't really consider it, I've started looking at it less about consulting and more about peer-based learning. And so I try to treat it as like I did just go to somebody's farm a few months ago, and I just called it a peer review, and I think that that's
I like that.
Yeah, it's a much better approach. And they paid me to come and do a peer review. So it's like I just go and observe, and observe the things that I would change myself or things that I identify are real strengths that they have going on. And then just you write up a report of what those strengths and weaknesses are. And then hopefully they can get some value out of it. And so that's kind of been my approach lately, because I don't want to come in with like oh, I know the answers, because I have no clue half the time. I'm just really good at observing and making decisions on the fly, and then being able to adjust as the time goes on, because that is the key to being a good farmer, is having the ability to pivot and adjust and observe and pivot and adjust and observe. That's kind of how I've run my whole entire career.
Yeah, I love that. I feel like that's a big theme of both of this podcast and the Growing for Market magazine too. There's a lot of, as you said, content out there that promotes a pretty shiny vision of farming. And then there's also a lot of content people can buy that suggests, if you do this or if you do that, this will be the magic bullet. And that's just not how farming works. I mean, you were talking about your region, just in your region, how many microclimates there are because of all the mountains and the valleys, let alone across the whole country. So much is about finding our very, very, very specific solutions to our piece of land, the tools we have. So I love that truth of that, and having that focus being on, here's information, go play with it.
Yep.
Yeah, I think that's part of why the people who stick around in farming stick around, is because they love that process. It's a little scientific. It's a little like cooking. It's also relational. You have to get to know your land, the people you work with, see what works best.
Yep. Yeah. We are the world's best generalists, honestly, when it comes down
Yes.
to farmers. Because people, when they ask me, I was like, oh, because I'll have younger folks like hit me up and say, oh, well, what kind of person or who did you call for this? I'm like, oh, YouTube, that's me. I'm going online and figuring it out, because can't afford to pay a contractor to come out and do so many things. So over the years, I've just learned to do most everything, and there's a few things that I still, like, I have my refrigeration repair guy on my favorites list on my phone, because that's one thing that I just have never delved into. It's just better to have him come out and take care of it. So
I guess you have a real compressor unit. You're not using a CoolBot.
Yep. I have a really strong stance against CoolBots, so.
Okay, well, we won't go into that.
No, it's okay. It's okay.
We can balance it out. Our house, our farm has always only used CoolBots, and we love the flexibility. At one point, we had 3 different size coolers with 3 different CoolBots running in them at 3 different temperatures. So could never afford to do that with compressor units. So they offer great flexibility.
I think that they're great. I think that the one thing I'll say, my only stance with it is, I've been on so many farms where people try to use the CoolBots to take the field heat out of the crop. So harvesting in the heat of the day and then coming in and just sticking it in the cooler with the CoolBot, and then expecting a 40,000 BTU air conditioning unit to remove the field heat and then get it down to temperature. And then they see their product not last on the shelf, in a wholesale environment very long, because you don't get that field heat out.
And a compressor unit can do that more effectively then?
Yeah, because like if my compressor unit is a 500,000 BTU unit, that just means
yeah, that's really different.
It's just physics, and so that's the only thing I say to people. Like I'm not against CoolBots. I think that they serve a great purpose. They're a great invention, but it's just how you use the tool, and I think that's super important. So if somebody is using a CoolBot to keep their product at temperature, you have to do everything in your power to get that heat out of the produce as quickly as possible, whether that's a dunk tank with ice water or harvesting first thing in the morning, prioritizing your harvest list. So it's not the tool's fault. It's just how you use the tool.
Yeah, that makes sense. People having realistic expectations. And that's for sure how we've always operated, is early morning harvests for greens. Definitely cold dunk. We have really cold well water. So getting that field heat off just is part of the washing process. And then, the CoolBots have always worked really well for us and give us the flexibility. But also, you were working at a scale that we never reached. When you were talking about you were doing your peak of your wholesale, That for sure, I feel like is a scale that definitely warrants a compressor unit because you probably had a very large cooler room for that situation.
Oh, yeah. I mean, our cooler is like 600 square feet. It's like a 25 by 28 or something like that. It's big. Well, and the other thing is when we were wholesaling, a lot of our product would get harvested one day and then it would be a week out before it got on the store shelves. And so you had to get that field heat out. You had to top ice. You had to put paper on top because it has to go through that supply chain. It would leave here, go to Medford, from Medford, go north, from there, go to a distribution center, from there, go to a finished grocery store. So it's going through the supply chain. And so when you're working in that wholesale realm, it's different than harvesting one day and then going to the farmer's market the next day. That's the other thing, is you just got to think about that.
Right. So I think it's like, don't try to run a 40-acre farm with a tilther.
Correct.
So you just need to be choosing the right tool for the job.
Yep.
Right.
It's all about the tools.
Right. Yeah. Okay. I want to hear more about your work with this cannabis farm because you're with your consulting. I'm so curious as a lifelong, I'll just say lifelong because it sounds like you got into vegetable farming quite young. Vegetable farmer, what was your impression going over into that industry of farming, which just has a very weird history of having to develop itself literally in the closet, right? Like people who got into that industry when it legalized here in Oregon, some of them hadn't literally never grown anything in the soil. So, what was that like? What were you finding? How were you able to help? What do you see in that industry? Obviously, it's gone through evolutions too, but
Oh, lots of evolution. So the cool thing is that there was a really strong movement here in Southern Oregon, especially because the climate is so perfect for that plant to grow, for people to be growing outside in the ground in native soils. And so there was a really big movement 10 plus years ago to move towards native soil grown plants. And then basically when I came into that farm and then other farms that I worked with as well, they had come out of the world of hydroponic growing, not all of them, but that industry came out of the world of hydroponic growing and soilless medias and all that. And the standard was to over fertilize everything, like to use a lot of inputs. And once you start scaling up and you're growing acres at a time, the input amount scaling up, it gets cost prohibitive. So that's what I moved into that realm to do, which was to lessen the environmental impact, yes, but also to lessen the...
Right, I was going to say the cost, but also like they were going to have runoff, presumably. Like that gets to be a pollution issue too.
Of course. And so many folks knew that, but they just didn't have another way. It's like, well, this is how we've always done it. And so basically it's just moving into the world of it is a plant just like all the other plants out there, and you can pretty much grow it like vegetables, and especially in our climate here. So that's basically what I did, was like treat it like a vegetable farm. And as far as the inputs go, as far as trying to mechanize as many things as you could do, trying to just implement the efficiencies of a vegetable farm into that scenario. And that it's pretty straightforward. I mean, it's just like a vineyard. It's just like an orchard. It's very similar. It's just a plant.
Mm-hmm. Right. Well, and it has overlaps with vegetable farming in that it's an annual crop, but also overlaps with vineyarding and orcharding in that you get basically one crop a year, right? I think it's only with a few types that you could maybe double crop. Usually it's just a single harvest. So I can see why they'd be reluctant to dial back because it's like they get one shot each year.
Mm-hmm.
So less room to tinker. Were you able to help this operation you were working with find a better balance of nutrients and...
Oh, yeah, for sure. Yeah. I mean, we cut costs amazingly, there was, because once you actually understand your soils, you know what it takes to grow on those soils, and you just streamline the process and don't over fertilize, and you actually get better plants because of it. It's the same way with growing broccoli. You can get ginormous broccoli plants with over fertilization, but they generally also will get hammered by aphids. And if you're growing organically, that's not great. So you have to find that balance of where you're only providing the nutrients that the plant needs. And that comes from just understanding your soils and proper mineralization and just find that balance.
Yeah, sounds like vegetable growing.
It is. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, yeah. Although the plants get a lot bigger than any vegetables I've ever seen.
They do, which is cool. Yeah, it's cool. But we're used to it because we're in a forested land around here. So we're just surrounded by trees already anyway. So yeah.
Just grow some more trees.
Yep.
But in a year.
Yeah, exactly.
So, Chris, you also have a podcast. I saw that you are pausing on producing new episodes right now during the farming season, but there's a lot of published episodes if people want to go back and listen. Tell us more about your farming podcast, what the focus has been, and who you like to interview.
Yeah. So again, I just kept it really simple. It was just reaching out to people that I was curious about and people that I had known for years. Honestly, a lot of it was reconnecting with folks that I hadn't talked to in a while that I was like, oh, I haven't talked to them in a while. I should see what they're up to. And it's called Not Only Farmers because the main reason is because myself, I'm not just a farmer. I've got so many other interests. And I've found that in our kind of like diverse technological lifetime that we're living right now, there's so many more things that you can be tapped into as a human. And so I just always wanted to hear what others had to say kind of outside of just the farming realm, whether that's philosophical takes or what they're up to, or just talking about farming. I can talk about farming all day.
Or families. You had me on to talk about my book about family life. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And, because we all have different focuses. So that's kind of where I'm at on things. And I paused it just because I knew that the last couple seasons were going to be intense because I was doing most of the farming on my own with some help, but most of it was on my own and it was just too much. And I wanted to kind of rethink as well, kind of what I would want to like investigate. So that's kind of what I'm looking at doing now is like, I'll probably start it back up again, maybe this next year and kind of start investigating more regional food systems. Like the regional food system world is kind of really interesting to me, especially here in the Pacific Northwest, and start tapping into people doing cool stuff here in the Northwest. I think that'd be cool to investigate. It's really just curiosity based. It's like, what am I curious and want to learn about,
So, Chris, what part of farming are you really passionate about? After all these years, what still excites you about the work?
Feeding people. That's really all I care about. I just like feeding people, doing farmers markets for 20 years. I just interacting with others, and it didn't matter what walk of life you came from. Like, I just knew that I could feed you produce. It was great. It like kind of goes above and beyond any politics, religion, or belief systems. That's what makes me keep doing it still. I never have to feel guilty about giving people food. It's awesome.
Right? I love selling a product that if people want to buy more, I have no qualms about selling them more.
Yep, exactly.
There's not a lot of things in this world that I would feel that good about. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, it's great.
We've already touched on this a little bit. It sounds like this is informing some of your potential future decisions, but looking to the future, what kind of long-term challenges do you see for Blue Fox and your work with farming in general? I mean, we did talk about this a little bit, but with the labor issues and the costs of production. So if you want to talk about farming in general, you're welcome to talk about long-term challenges you see for farmers and tie it into Blue Fox. Just kind of what do you see? What do you see out there?
You know what? I think the thing that Melanie and I are both thinking about a lot right now, because we have a senior and a freshman in high school, is a continuation model for the land, whether it's Blue Fox or not. And we're already working on that a little bit as far as, like I said, we've leased parts of the farm out to other folks trying to get a start. But what does that continuation of this land look like down the road? So those are things we're investigating right now. And we've investigated land trust options and different kind of ownership structures for other folks. Those are the things that we're really looking at, because as we go forward, it's going to get harder and harder for other people to get into farming, because people need to eat. So that's the thing that we're most looking forward to figuring out. Even if our actual career as farmers sunsets, I don't see us walking away from agriculture. It's just like, what role do we play in the bigger system? We're kind of moving into that elder role here shortly. That's just reality.
Yeah, I feel that. And it does seem like there's a certain point where, especially folks who have operated a farm where they are materially involved with the daily farming, there is a point where that starts to necessarily shift because literally, like, even just the physical work is harder. So, yeah, thinking about those next steps.
Mm-hmm.
So, as you know, our audience is direct market farmers like yourself or people who want to be. I'm always curious about tips and tricks we can share with each other. What kind of best thing have you done for Blue Fox that you want to share, or some kind of tidbit that you want to, like, that we haven't talked about? Like, this is what your audience needs to know about, and how has it been positive?
Right. The things that I always tell people when they're getting into farming is kind of the things that I've learned over the years, which are try to stay within your means. You know, I've known so many people that get overextended financially because we live in the Instagram era where all the fancy bells and whistles and the solutions, right, for everything can really put people in debt. So stay within your means is a really important one. Take care of your body. Like, just understanding, it sounds so cliche, but like lifting with your legs and not your back. I mean, it took me 20 years to figure that out. and
Yeah, I
and
agree.
it's
What that really
huge.
means.
Yeah. And with that, I use a pallet jack and a two-wheeled hand truck as much as I possibly can. I've got a fork attachment for my tractor for both the front and the back, trying to look at all the things that help maintain your body and your employees' bodies quicker, like figuring that out as quick as you can. It makes everything better. Once we realized that we could get a simple fork attachment for the back of our tractor and buy a macro tote from an old vineyard, a bunch of them, and then harvest into that as opposed to harvesting individually into harvest totes. It changed not only the efficiency considerably, but it also changed the happiness factor of me and the employees considerably, because you're just not as burned out. So there's a lot that you can do on a farm to be efficient and take care of yourself that doesn't cost a lot of money.
Definitely. Folks, listen to that. Chris, is there anything else you'd just like to share with our audience about you, your work, farming?
I don't think that farming is going to get any easier. So just make sure you talk to as many people as you can. Build a friend network of farmers, because farmers are crazy folk and we like to flock together. And even though some of us seem grouchy, most of us are pretty approachable if you approach it with humility and that you're just wanting to learn. So that's about it.
Great. And if people want to connect with you or your farm or anything you're up to further, what are the best ways to connect?
Instagram's really the only place that I'm on these days. Some days I feel like getting rid of that too. But
Okay.
that's the best place to find us currently, is just send a DM on the Blue Fox Farm Instagram page.
Okay. So for now, Instagram, you can find Chris and Blue Fox Farm and all those videos, little reels you've made about all kinds of farming experiences and farming topics over the years that are just available there for free if anybody wants to learn from Chris. Well, thank you so much for sharing, Chris. It was great to catch up and hear what you're working on this year. And I wish you the best with whatever next evolution happens for you and Blue Fox and your family.
Thanks, Katie.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of the Growing for Market podcast. If you've been enjoying the show, please consider giving us a follow and a rating or review. It really helps others find the podcast. For more tips and information from farmer to farmer, check out our magazine at growingformarket.com. Whether you're a commercial grower or just want to grow like one, subscribe to Growing for Market magazine for the nitty-gritty of growing, marketing, and the business of market farming. We publish 10 issues per year with articles written by experienced farmers on topics ranging from tools and techniques to farm business operations and marketing. If you've been listening to the Growing for Market podcast and you haven't yet checked out Growing for Market magazine, we've made a change so you can try the magazine for free. We've added a free month to the beginning of all first-time subscriptions. Try out the digital or paper magazine, and if it's not for you, cancel within 28 days and you'll never get billed. With digital subscriptions starting at just $39 per year, you get a year of the magazine, plus over 150 back issues from the last 15 years. Head on over to growingformarket.com and subscribe today to benefit from over 3 decades of writing by farmers, for farmers, and Growing for Market magazine.